Okay, let's get started. Good morning, all. All right. So for today, you can see what our current market focus is. Equities so far have moved from our demand to our supply, and now we are currently below supply. A couple of key pieces of news that we have coming in to today. OPEC is still unclear about exactly what they're doing. So you can see the prices have fell from our supply zone as we await basically Saudi Arabia and Russia, and then U.S. also involved too. So those things need to be cleared out before prices can start to move back up again. And as far as the dollar is concerned, the dollar and the euro also key week too. The dollar is waiting a little bit more for the stimulus if U.S. is going to give some more, and as well as the EU is having a lot of issues, which affects the euro directly, which then affects the dollar as well. So those couple of things is going to be something to watch for coming in tomorrow, but I'm thinking even possibly the weekend into next week with how things are going this morning. So what basically happened is this morning they were supposed to pass their stimulus, but didn't go through. A lot of issues with the North and South. And now they're saying tomorrow they're going to reconvene. But now I've also heard, oh, yeah, it's looking really good. We should know before Easter. So that's telling me more than likely they're not going to say something tomorrow. They're already expecting to say something perhaps Monday. All in all, they know they need it. This is not a situation where you can. I mean, I'm seeing the situation here right now where yes, it relieves some of the stress. Some of the people that filed right away the unemployment, they got it. Other people with the small business loans, they went to the bank. They already know that they're approved and they know they're getting money, and it becomes a grant. They're also relieved, and then they can pay their workers and they don't have to, let them go and file. So I do see some sort of relief. So it definitely is something that is needed as we wait this out a little bit longer. So, all right. Let us move into our next chart. Okay, so you can see that this is a picture of Intel here at a demand zone last Friday, where we were above it pre-market and came into it again. Actually hit it a couple times during the session because remember the market, if you remember last week, all the news was bad. There wasn't much good news that went along with anything. But a couple of key factors that, made a couple of decisions, but we'll talk about it. But, one thing I do want to bring up with all of this is, what's important? What do you think is important with just in general? It could be anything. This we're talking about trading, but it could be if you want to start your learning in something else, if you want to be a good anything, any sort of profession. What do you think is the very important that you lay the groundwork out right before you continue on? Because, when you start out anything, you have to start out properly, right? Yeah. So if you want to start out right, so I'm gonna go through a little bit of a story, and then I'll get back to all this. Where you're gonna start out with your foundation, right? Your foundation has to be great. If you start out with a bad foundation, doesn't matter what it is, and I'm going to use a little bit of a sports analogy just because I like watching sports. But if you think about it, right, if you don't have the basics down, you're not going to win, right? If you are going to, if we're talking about football, if you're going to fumble, if you're going to miss field goals, if you're going to miss tackles, or if in tennis, if you're going to double fault, if you're not going to have your footwork, if your ground strokes aren't there, you're not going to get off the ground, right? And it's the same thing here. If you don't have your correct supply and demand, pure supply and demand, you're not going to get off the ground either. Right, and if you see where Sam Seiden came from, which is the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, right? Everything that matters over there is just order flow, buyers, sellers, stacks of papers where the buyers are, and stacks of paper where the sellers are. Now, I could be wrong. Somebody, if you want to correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that there was a, RSI that went along with those stacks of paper, or a MACD, or a trend tool that went along with the stacks of papers. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm just thinking that that's not how it went over there. And so in his mind, it was always pure supply and demand. And that's how this all originated from. And I remember when I started where it was completely different. And being somebody that was new when I started, you're thrown a lot of things. And you don't know you're thrown a lot of things. And that's the problem, right? You think that that's normal because that's what you're paying for. Don't get me wrong, you can't do it alone. I tried to go through the forest by myself. I couldn't do it. So I decided I have to pay for it to get it. But then when I started paying for it, all I did was kept getting more things. So what would happen would be like, okay, here's a couple of strategies. Go home and go do it. And I'd come back after, a week or 2 weeks and they said, well, how did it go? And I'd be like, I don't know. You're telling me to use this at the open when I don't even know what I'm looking at right now. And they said, well, it worked very well for this person over here and this person over there. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're looking at. So it's very important, keeping it simple is important, and making sure your foundation is really great. Once you build your foundation, then you continue to move on, right? As you can see, if you're playing games, you're gonna beat out, right? If you have your foundation down, you're gonna beat out all the weak ones. All the weak ones around you are gonna be gone. Now you're starting, and you're gonna be going into, if it's football, you're going into the playoffs, right? You're gonna move into that league because everybody else you're gonna be able to beat. Now you're moving into that league. Now you're going into the next line, right? The next line where it's not just your not making mistakes and being careful. Now you actually got to execute, right? You got to execute. You have to, if you're a quarterback, you have to make the passes. You're the receivers, you have to receive. You have to, practice the plays, and you have to do everything correctly. So your execution has to be perfect. So now you're into the next league where you're playing, and you have to get up to that standard, right? So then that becomes your next line. So that's where your next part of your learning starts to go. Now you're going, say, into the Super Bowl, right? Now you got to put yourself into even another league. Now some of you, that may be just fine for you. You get into the playoffs, that's great, and you will still do great. But some of you say, no, I want to get into the Super Bowl, right? That's the elite level. But if you really take a look at it, for those of you that follow each year the Super Bowl, you'll see that when the games are tight, the plays that they win with are not conventional plays. They come out with so many different things that's just surprising that wins the games. And if you can think about it, what we do with some of them, yes, they're just classic supply and demand. Others of it, you can see we do a little bit more thinking, a little bit of, so a lot of you are looking at this and saying, on this Intel chart, and saying, well, I don't know, I can't really see that there. That's because there's a lot of different things that went into it. There's a lot of that, and not just this chart, but we'll go into the other ones that we hit among as well too. Remember, you're taking information from different areas. You're grabbing things that you have learned, grabbing it in and putting it into your head. And that's where, unfortunately, we can't go through everything because this is beyond the scope of this session. So we can't go over everything in detail. But, you can just see with this level that worked out very nicely. And not just this one, but you're going to go in and see too. Let's go in and take a look real quick. Right? On the same day, we also had this area, which you might have said, well, I don't know. I mean, this area, was it okay? But you can see that's where we came back into. Remember, the day wasn't that strong, but held right into this level. And again, we gapped up. The other one, you could see too, it didn't rally as well, but kind of held in there. And then you can see too, also rally back up. The other one too that we didn't draw in a line, but I just pointed out to you is, if you remember Apple. We were sitting here that day and I was pointing to this area right here. And I said, well, for those of you that like it is a smaller time frame area inside of Apple. And you can see that prices came. So if we take a look at this area, what did happen? Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Right? Now, some of you, what I've noticed too is this, where I'll go back to, and then of course we had one that didn't hit. Okay, so we had this one that didn't hit. And to me, so this is what I could be, but this is what I'm feeling with everyone. Oh, okay, let me take a look. Okay, that's a level. Okay, yes, that's a level. All right, doesn't look like it's going to, come in today. So, okay, I'm going to look at it and everything looks fine. When everybody's like, calm, complacent and everything. When I showed you this one, it was a completely different story, right? It was a completely different story. When I showed you this one where it was, sitting like this. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, okay, well, prices is up here. So that means we're very close to here. Then it became all the questions like, oh, is that good? Is that, what do you think? Is that, and I can just imagine, I could just feel, the pressure kind of mounting already. I don't know if should I take it? Should I not take it? And it's such a different feeling than when you show one that's a little bit further away and then people are saying, well, yeah, that looks fine. Yeah, that'd be something that I want to take. Now, all of a sudden, you got to decide within, half an hour if you want to take it or not. And it becomes a whole another scenario with it, right? But remember too, a key thing, that's why I say, you want to pull information. Don't get fooled by the fake people. Don't get information by fake people. With this, I remember exactly that week, Sam Simon said, listen, the RTY demand is a key area for us this week, right? That already put my head into, okay, let me try to look for some demand in stocks, right? That already put my head into that, let alone as we go on into other things. But you can see the right people driving you in the right direction is going to make you good decisions. So now you can see here, now this also, as we tweeted out that we're nearing supply, then you can see that that's kind of where we ended. And with this too, if you can imagine, is that the S&P also came near its supply too as well. So just the more you can try to put all these things together, the better it is going to be for your trading. In the beginning, if you're very new to it, you just want to stick with simplicity. Just know your foundation. Do not learn the wrong foundation. If you learn the wrong foundation, it's going to take you down the wrong. It's just like you got to try to break bad habits. Some of you I know probably already developed bad habits in trading and you got to try to break that. That's already hard enough. You definitely do not want to learn the wrong foundation and then have to try to go backtrack on that. So don't do that. Now let's look into the charts. All right, so let's see what's going on with today. So you can see on our .D chart. So you can see here both the NASDAQ, S&P, basically back down into the areas on Friday, and that's where we start to rally up. Clear thing about this is, there's really nothing in between to stop it. We already saw that the gap we already came into the gap before. We already came into this area before. We actually went above it in the overnight, went to the higher area. Once we opened up, this area held again. But you can just see that really the higher area was where we have mentioned numerous times that was the fresh zone that we're looking for. And if you take a look on this other page, you can see that that's exactly where. Let me go back. And this is the overnight. Right, that's where prices went back up to. So you can see that. So the only difference a little bit with the NASDAQ, we did have a 4-hour zone that was closer, but unfortunately these others were not. Were a little bit further away, the YM and the RTY and ES. So we did bounce from the NASDAQ zone from about 80.95 to 70.48 and then went a little bit higher before these other markets reached some supply. But you can see too, also hitting down into demand, the NASDAQ on that Friday. You can see with the stocks and with these markets, the key with that on it was such bad news all week, and we really couldn't close below these levels of demand as we went into Friday. So now you can see coming in to today. Let's take a look what we have now. The areas are still higher on our fresher supplies. There are some overnight supplies right now that's going to be lower quality in general. So you can see the overnight high is still being made at the current moment. We still have approximately a little bit more than an hour to go before the open. So even though this is saying the overnight high at the current moment, we still don't exactly know as far as, even an hour, it could be the other way around too, where the overnight low as well doesn't hold either. So we're right in the middle. Now, above current price, all the equity markets had these, which is just, like I said, small time frame zones after a drop from our higher time frame zones. So there are going to be less quality because they're in the middle of the range of our demand zone to our supply zone. Right, so you can see right up above, you have these three on top of each other. It starts at the 2704, goes up to the 2721. And like I said, they're all of them are going to be the same. So one thing I wouldn't do if you want to take it, if you took it from the higher time frame, you don't even have anything to worry about. More than likely, you already got your target, you're already out. If you're looking at this, you definitely don't want to say, let's take it in all of them, pick one market, or you just want to say, I'm going to wait until we get into fresher zones again. So those are your couple of options with that. Now on the demand side, let me just see where. think it was on the 5-minute. Let me just make sure which chart it's on. Might have been on that chart that I was on. I think it was on that chart. Let me scroll back and see. Okay, here you are. So you have these 5 minutes, which is on top of the 60-minute. So you can see this comes in right now. Like I said, looks like it's going to be right below the overnight low. That's coming in at 26.10.75 to 25.96. Okay. And you can kind of see too, that's just a little bit above this area. On this 60. So it's almost like you got those three on top of each other. So if it does come back down, you can watch those three, the 2 5-minute and the 60 all together within that area. Above current price, you can see we still have this zone that's right above the yesterday's high. That's coming in at 27.78 to 28.39 on the 4-hour. 60-minute is still quite a bit higher, I believe. 60-minute, you can see we do have two levels on top of each other, so we'll worry about that should we get it back up there a little bit later. But you can see it does start at the 30.002 to 30.34 to the 30.81. All right, so that's a quick little rundown of S&P. I hope everything's going okay in the chat with support. I'm concentrating on what I'm doing, so hopefully everything's going okay. All right, so now let's move in. So like I said with the NASDAQ, the one thing with the NASDAQ was it was a struggle to try to really find some decent supply. So what I would do with the NASDAQ is wait for some of the other markets to come in, and then if there's new supply that forms, you can try to take that. But as far as finding some quality really close by, it wasn't that easy. You have the smaller time frame like with the rest of them. Right now above the overnight high, you can see you have a couple on top of each other. This one actually was hit. So really mainly focusing on the top two, but that one just barely hit. All right, so you can see these little three on top of each other, starting at the 81.65.75, and then the last one ending at the 82.22. But you can see it's 81.65 to 81.72, 81.77 to 81.86, and 82.01 to 82.22. On the demand side, you can see we have this 15-minute area right below at the moment yesterday's low, and that's coming in at 78.78.75 to 78.29. Okay, but in terms of saying there's not a whole lot of quality, you can just see here, hard to tell here because what we have, we don't see the overnight session, but there has been a lot of, a lot of them have been tested before. So it doesn't mean it can't work again. It's just that we would just be a little bit more careful and wait for other equity markets to come into supply so we could try to take this to the short side. But you can see the gap is way up higher. The ones that haven't been hit That's coming in all the way up to the 9,400. So we could have some volatility coming in with these markets too, given that scenario, right? Remember, we are with the EU and the dollar and all. What happens is the dollar has been affecting the stock market as well. Okay, Russell's still coming off of our 4-hour demand zone. Remember, it was key for us last week. It has not made it up to its supply zone yet, so it's still, you can see it still didn't fill the gap yet at the 1244. So that's going to still be in play with the other level right up above it that goes up to 1301. YM, you can see, also came into our supply zone. You can see just touched it very nicely, fell back down during, this is the day session, right? Filled the gap and then dropped back down. And now we are, okay. Now, same thing, they all have these smaller time frame, and you can see it's the same thing too. And like I said, a little bit lower odds with these just because of where it is in that bigger, just because of where we're falling. We've already fallen from there now. This is the areas that are inside of there. And you can see it starts at the 23,091 to 23,249. All right. The other thing we discussed last week was, let me go back to, the bonds. Okay, so remember what we said last week too. We had said that we were bouncing between supply and demand inside of the bonds. And if we did start to see a break of the demand, then more than likely we're going to see a rally inside of the equities. And you can see that's exactly what has happened. We have now pulled into a little bit of supply. You still have a little bit more right up on top. That's 138.14, 138.23. But you can see, getting in at these places where you're supposed to. And the other thing we were looking at too is that it just stood here for so long. I mean, if the imbalance was that strong, you can see that prices would have just shot up there. But it stood in here for quite some time, so made us think that we were going to see a little bit of a reversal in these markets. Another, clue thing. All right, so let me just make sure. Then our lower demands are still in play right now, which is starting at the 136.23 to the 136.15, then going to the 136.08 to 135.29. Okay. I don't believe there's too much new with the U.S. It's pretty much the same thing. They do have some supply up above, and it looks like it also hit its first little supply too. So I don't think we need to go through this. Pretty similar to the 10-year at the current moment. They're all falling back as equities are rising up. All right, let's move on to CL. Okay, so like I said, we're still having issues with the overall OPEC and its allies. Still having to make that decision, even though right now there's not a big demand for oil, so take it for what it is. But you can see, so remember here with this 4-hour zone, And this was mainly for that reason, because we know if we have really good news, things could easily try to move up. But with this 4-hour zone, and you can see it was in a white circle, mainly because it was retested. Just out of curiosity, anybody, because I know a lot of people like to trade crude, whether you got in a little bit later or whatever it may be, were you able to get in somewhere on the short side with crude, knowing some direction? So you can see right here where prices just barely touched. Then we came in again. Then we gapped a little bit lower through there, and you can see we never came back through there. And now we've come back again. Like I said, this market has been weak, and without major, there's no real consumption yet, and the news is not favoring at the moment, so it continues to hold the level even though it has been tested before, right? The above areas are still much higher. You would need, I would imagine for it to get back up there, you're definitely going to see some strength come in. So therefore, you're going to have some new demand zones as you get up there too. Okay, excellent. Nice. Okay. So you can see the one thing that we did have these two demand zones. So remember, this whole thing is coming off of, I'm not going to pull it up right now, but I did show you the other day where we had these 3 zones on the 120 minute. This area was coming off of the first zone on the 120 minute, and we had 2 more underneath it. This whole area is coming off of the monthly demand. So all of this is inside the monthly demand. So what you want to realize with this one now, we did have 2 areas here. The lower one looks better than the upper one, but then realize that this whole thing is coming off of that 120 minute overall zone. So it's good to pay attention to this one is if you do have some new supply that forms above it, just know your profit potential and be okay with it, because you could very well have the news and everything just spring back up again, but given the situation at the moment, it's still a little bit more to the overall downside, right? So anyway, that's our area down below, which is the 2148 to the 2064, and like I said, that's coming off of the higher time frame overall demand zones. Okay, now if you want to look inside of here right now and see if there is oil inventory. So, there is some supply levels inside of here. There's some 5-minute supply levels, and there's some, but I'll go show you where the 30-minute is. So for those of you that want to. So you can see right here, this is what we have. We have right now. So oil opens up at 9, so another, I believe, like 22 minutes or so. And so you can see that the overnight high right now is created up at 25.29. Overnight low could still be forming at the current, but currently it's at 23.54. Like I said, it still has more time to get there. And so this area is in between our supply zone, between yesterday's high, but above the overnight high at the current moment, right? So this is where that location is, just so you know. I mean, location is key. Not every trade is going to be perfect, but for some of you that are willing to take it. All right, let's go and take a look at. Yeah, well, you got to realize with all of these markets, the news that affects each of these markets, right? So are you always going to know, when they're going to come out? I mean, the major ones, yes. Other ones, like right now, they kind of throw out stimulus whenever they surprise you with it all over the place, rate cuts all over the place. What it looks like to me, though, most of them don't have a lot of more room for the rate cuts, so there shouldn't be too much more surprises there. Stimulus, there's limited in I believe in some of the countries, and for this oil, you can see there was a lot of back and forth. They're saying, well, it's going to be decided this day, that day, but meanwhile, it doesn't happen. So that creates the extra volatility, right? Uncertainty. So think about it with the market. The new right it's going to fundamentally be driven the way it needs to move, right? It can't, the way it needs to go, it's going to go. However, what's going to happen that day with the news is usually the tricky part of things, right? Because you're expecting something, but then all of a sudden it comes the unexpected. So then you're thinking, I know sometimes, I know how it works. It's like, okay, you hear bad news, then all of a sudden, oh yes, I should short. But meanwhile, it hit into a little demand zone. So all of a sudden it starts to rally. And so you try to get short, right, because you heard the news, but then it just started rallying on you, and then it hits a supply zone, then it starts falling again, but you didn't take it because you just got stopped out trying to go short at the demand zone because you're trying to play the news. So you got to be careful when you're doing it on a daily basis, and that's usually why your volatilities increase, your spreads increase, all those things increase because you have all this uncertainty that comes in when the news actually happens. So you have to be a little bit careful with that. The other thing too I was looking at too was when I was bringing up that point about the with being close to, I remember too kind of this day here. So remember our last zone right about there, right? Right, so a last zone here, missed by a point or two, right through here, but you can just see here, like I'll put it into a 15 minutes, so it looks a little better. All right, so no, we could do, wait, I'll leave it at this way we can just see the candles. Right, so this is about our session here. Okay, we just missed. Okay, that's fine. But then okay, so start moving back up. So now, okay, so you have the zone down there, and then you're sitting there, and then all of a sudden the market opens, and then it goes like this, right? So now, and I gotta believe that because like once it's further away, you're not thinking about it too much. Once it gets closer, now all of a sudden you got a lot of thoughts going to your head. Well, is this? I mean, we just had a rally. Well, we just this is overnight. Ew, I don't know. Maybe not. Well, I got to decide very quickly, and then all of a sudden, it stops here and then it starts turning again, and then you're like, okay, I don't have to decide. Okay. Good. Like all of a sudden it's that, and I guess my point with that is it's the same thing with the Intel one, that actually came in, because now all of a sudden you're, instead of just saying, this is my bias for the day, this is where I want to get in. This is why I hate getting in at, there's a couple of reasons why, it's fine to take them up when it's this high, but you always want to make sure where you are in the bigger picture. The bigger picture, we didn't have supply close, so it was fine. But what I hate is getting in, instead of getting in here where it feels the worst, right? But getting in here because it feels the best, right? Getting in here because you think, oh yes, I see confirmation, nice green candle, and yeah, that's where I want to buy. And then right when you buy, that's when things come, right back down again. So if you take a look, a lot of places they tell you, oh, well, 2 days green, let me, you want to buy a breakout on that third day. Well, if you buy the breakout on the third day, if the supply didn't get cleared yet, it's going to come back down on you. So you're buying on the third day only. By the time it hit our supply level 3 or 4 times, and then, but I still wouldn't buy there because I don't want to buy here. I want to buy somewhere where I know where my entry is, where my stop is, so I have the lowest risk possibility. I don't want to be buying in a lot of places. That's exactly what they tell you to do. They tell you once you get that nice little confirmation, that's where you want to try to buy it. And that's where you have no clue where your stop is. And that's where you start to get emotional trading going on and revenge trading. And you people know who I'm talking to. You take that emotional trade and then the rest of the day becomes one big, huge emotional day. Then you get mad at everybody around you. Even your cat or your dog. It's everybody's fault, not your fault. All right, let's take a look at a bigger picture of GC. GC on the daily. So this is gold. A little bit higher up, you still have some room to the next supply sitting at the 1762 to 1783. On the demand side, you can see we're below the low. That's way lower, but you can just see on the bigger picture where it is coming into 1431, 1402. Let's move now into, so we're sitting at 1684. GC opens a little bit earlier, so it already, let me just see a 15-minute chart. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now. All right, so you can see what's been happening here. Hit into a little bit of demand and now starting to bounce up. Now this area here, not, location-wise, not the greatest, but if you want to look for a little bit of just, if you can get a little. So this is right now the overnight high. We'll go take a look at the dollar too. But you can see a little bit of two levels on top of each other, starting at the 1701.50 to 1706. Like I said, just a small time frame. Area with that on GC. Pullbacks, you still want to be a buyer, but let's take a look at the, let me just see where, I think I had a 45. Oh, let me go back. I didn't do the demand here. Okay, so you can see this area here. We did test it once, but you can see it created a very nice strong move out. So still look at it again, but that's if it is able to come back down to the 1629.30 to the 1619. All right, let's go take a look at that dollar just so we know. And when we see a good reason to look at stocks again to get some more long entries, we will. So we let this equities play out a little bit with the news, and then we'll revisit. So with the dollar, so for those of you, okay, let me move to the other chart. Okay, so this is the dollar. This is where we were sitting at the other day, and you can see since then we have continued to move. Like I said, a couple of things with the euro news and as well as possibly more stimulus for U.S. too, which is looking like it. But it hasn't been, they're just barely rolling this out right now. So I would imagine it's going to take a little bit of time that it gets all settled down. But you can see with this, so you can see still some weakness inside of the dollar. So with that, you do want to, at the moment, just realize the situation, because if you're going to have some weakness inside the dollar, if you have some shorts in the currencies, make sure or if you did already take some profit within the opposing first area, because the dollar is coming off of a supply right now. Did try to hold up a little bit at demand, but you can see it didn't really break through that supply, so this demand not as good as the lower one. Now let's go and take a look at so just out of curiosity, anybody are in any FX positions? We came into our level here, whether you took it in the futures or inside of the spot, and you can see prices moved up, then had to test this close area, and then started to drop back down again. And remember with this too, the news came along with this, right? The news came along. It was early in the morning. This was like mainly Asia. So, people already. It's just amazing how these, right? OPEC has issues into supply zone. Euro has issues into supply zone. Just kind of amazing how those things happen. But you can see, since then, though, they did say, oh, yeah, things are looking good. Don't worry. It's all good. But, we're supposed to have a call tomorrow, but then we'll definitely tell you by Easter. So I'm not sure exactly what that's supposed to mean. They're telling you it looks really good, but then yet they're saying their call tomorrow, but then it's going to be Easter. So, that to me still is unclarity, but it looks like the market's still okay with it. So they're kind of hanging in there with the euro because of it. It's more of a north-south issue at the moment. Let's continue on. So let's see let me see where else I was looking at. And then you can see much higher in terms of a fresh supply that's coming up. That's much higher, going to be at this 113. So right now we'll deal with what we have at the current moment because of the situation. All right. With that, you also have a few. Okay, yeah. So, like I said, right now you are in a little bit of limbo with the overall news and stuff. But I'm thinking they're all hanging in there, but I myself don't see a lot of clarity. It is holding into a couple of, because you do have a couple demand zones get through. It held through this 30-minute demand zone. You have these two little 15-minute demand zones right underneath it. So it is still holding up because it's got to chop through a little bit of demand in order to move any lower. The other markets too that came in was, so JY. How about JY? Anybody try JY? So this would be the opposite picture of the dollar yen, right? The dollar yen, if this is a short, the dollar yen would be a buy. So you would try to go look on your 240 chart on the dollar yen and look for levels of a buy on the dollar yen. The issue with the yen, you can see how it got. I mean, one thing it also had a stimulus, 1 trillion. For them, that's what they're doing. So it did have stimulus, so it did weaken the yen. It also had a stock market rally, so that also weakened the yen. But what makes the yen hard at times, where it just loses complete volatility, because you have two things that's weakening the yen, but then you have the dollar, which is weakening, which actually is strengthening the yen. So that's why you're having this mixture. So you have that initial, move down on stimulus talk. Then you had a move. Move into supply when the market was coming a little bit down. Then you can see as it's coming back up, it's moving back down again. So you can see for it didn't break down. So this is the area that you're looking for it to try to break if it can. This area right here. All right, so it's hanging in through here at the moment. So a little bit back and forth. Then you still have the upper level. That's just a little bit higher too. And remember, dollar yen, that would be the opposite of it. 92.77, 93.01. Okay, so nice job for those of you that's taken some of these markets. I think you do have to watch the dollar. You do have to pay attention to the euro tomorrow. The euro does comprise 57.6 of the dollar. So whatever happens to the euro, it is going to affect the dollar as an overall inverse relationship there. So, if you are short currencies, it doesn't matter which one it is at the moment, because once there's a big dollar move, it's going to impact all of them. And if it's a big euro move, it's going to impact the dollar. So, all right. The other one was the Swiss franc, where so if you remember the Swiss franc, we had it took a while, but it finally broke out. It took a while because so it's always the question of, well, should I take it? Should I take it because it has opposing, the arrival and all that. With that, again, I bring it back down to the risk. If you got a lot of momentum going into it and it's fast, and yeah, you can sit and wait a little bit, but you can see if you waited a little bit, it did level off and never broke below the low. Then you can see with the dollar coming in. So the key was the dollar coming into supply. So if the dollar coming into supply, then you started that nice little rally out. That was the key with it all. This might have entered in before the dollar was at supply, so it stood here for a little while too as well. But you can see too this level up on top, 10448, 10478. Did test once, but you can see did drop pretty nicely out of the zone. Okay, so keep in mind the main lesson for today is keep it simple. You want the original pure supply and demand. Don't let other people throw a whole bunch of things at you. That's what happened to me. It took me a while to get out of there so that I can say, I made it through and I came out just to get more simplicity rather than more complex situation to make things worse for myself. All right. So remember that as you continue on into your journey. All right, everyone. Have a great day. And I will see you next time. Look on the Twitter. All right. See you all.